Welcome to the Monday Monologue. Well, today we're going to talk about bullies and balanced audio. And no, they don't have anything to do with each other, but they're going to be in the same segment. And I was going to talk solely about balanced audio, but something came to my attention which you guys have watched me experience, and that's manufacturers bullying reviewers. Aaron's Audio Corner, I don't know if y'all are subscribed to it. If not, you need to go subscribe to his channel, especially if you're interested in speakers. He's got some crazy, probably really expensive measuring equipment that he sets up in a room specifically designed for testing speakers. And he does a listening test, or sits down and listens to the speakers, then he tests them, and then he listens to them again. And that's something you've seen me try to do, is listen to the stuff first, then test it, and then listen again after I've seen the test to see if I can hear what the tests show. And he just did a review on I think it's a Tecton speaker that I thought was a fairly reasonable review. I didn't see it as a negative. These aren't super expensive speakers. We're not talking about, speakers are supposed to be holy grail, $30,000 speakers. These are kind of mainstream speakers. And I honestly gave a much harsher review to the new RP600M2s than he did these speakers. And of course, Clips didn't go after me for my review because it was just my subjective opinion that I liked the earlier version better. And some people like the newer one better. Some people like a more neutral sounding speaker. I'm not one of those people. And I think some of my viewers aren't those kind of people, that you're fine with gear that maybe isn't 100% accurate to what the source is, that it adds some color and flavor that you think sounds good. And that's all well and good. And when Aaron did his review on this speaker, he was talking about that it's a little hot in the upper mid-range. And I brought one of my amps over to a customer's house that has these speakers. And I think these are SET, the Perfect SET or something they're called. And they sounded really nice with this older Marantz receiver, but they sounded a little hot in the upper mid-range with my amp, which it doesn't sound like that even on my Clip speakers. And we were really struggling and are still kind of battling this whole, calming down this upper mid-range and getting the bass boosted up enough so that it's flatter. And we're still going to do some tube rolling and stuff. I hadn't forgot about you. But yeah, that would be what I would say about those speakers too. And the owner of that company sent this guy threatening letters of lawsuits and that he needs to pull his review down. Like now. And if you don't do something this morning. And like, I'm losing sales because of this. Well, he went on another rant against Amir over at ASR, which I'm not a huge fan of the way Amir does his reviews, but he's got a huge following, so clearly people do. And I have a right to say that I'm not a big fan of his test-only kind of reviews. There's not a lot of subjective listening, because sometimes the stuff that shows in tests you don't even hear. And Aaron even says that about these speakers, that there's like this 250 hertz little bobble, and he says in the review, but it's not audible. And the owner of that company loses his mind over this. And that's got to stop. I mean, we all see these channels that are popular that all they give is glowing reviews of everything. Well, that's why. They're gun shy of being honest because these manufacturers likely have threatened to sue these people in the past and demanded that they take reviews down. And we all know about Bose suing Consumer Reports and actually winning, and then the decision got reversed. And in 2016, there were some laws passed that limits the liability of reviewers or the ability of manufacturers to sue reviewers for giving honest reviews, because we were having situations where people were reviewing things at Amazon and getting threatened by the manufacturer to take their reviews down. And you all saw what Wilsonton did with me. They basically told me to take my review down. Then they, God, that whole thing was just so crazy. Got one guy telling me, we appreciate what you're showing us. Well, first he wanted me to take the review down. Then he said he appreciates what I was giving them as far as feedback. And then they fixed the R8 and sent me this updated model that had my, fixes done to it, or the majority of them anyway, the main ones, like the safety resistors on the bias boards, and they cleaned up the grounding and sent me an amp. And then somebody else at the company's threatening a lawsuit with an open letter on a forum. It's like, what? And they actually sent me an amp. So like, what are they even doing? That's even crazier than what's happening to Aaron. And there's several other YouTubers that have talked about, this happening to them. And we can't let this continue, because it's going to make me scared to give my honest reviews of stuff. And yeah, a lot of it's subjective. Sometimes I show measurements of it. When I measured something wrong, which can happen, like that past ACA amp, I did another video showing, hey, I didn't realize that the polarity was reversed on the output. And here's the real measurements. And Aaron just did the same thing with his speaker review. They were claiming the feet not being on it is what made it measure bad. And so he put the feet on it and basically got the same measurements. And then some other glowing review that they actually use on their website as an example review shows the speakers being used without the feet on them. And so, yeah, the manufacturer's showing a review with no feet on their speakers, and then they're threatening a lawsuit against somebody else because they reviewed it without the feet on it. Tell me how that makes any sense. And the other thing that I thought was really crazy was when this guy starts talking about this was a unsolicited review. It's like, what? It's like, all of my reviews are unsolicited, and people just send me stuff to try, or I go out and buy it. Like I did with that Blue Sound Note X. I went out and bought that. Just off the shelf one. I don't want them sending me ringers that have got some custom chips they've put in it to give you one that's going to have a crazy good review. Because the car companies used to do that. They hyper tune up these cars and blueprint the engines and stuff and then send them to a reviewer, and they perform better than the one that you could buy off the showroom floor. And so I think you're better off buying or having someone lend you gear to review, and then you're actually reviewing one like everybody else like you are going to get. And then same thing with my turntable. It's just one I bought. Same thing with these. Got these little topping DACs I'm going to be doing soon. So anyway, just a little rant about that. Going to put Aaron's channel and then the video about this in the comments below so you can go check this out. And like I said, give Aaron a sub. He's a super nice guy. And if you watch a couple of videos, you can just tell he's a nice guy who's just kind of doing this on the side for the community and then gets set on fire. So the next thing I want to talk about is balanced audio. And it's a very confusing subject to me. And I don't know, I know some of y'all are going to go, oh, it's simple, you're an idiot for not understanding this. But it's not that simple to understand, and it doesn't seem like there's a consistent application of what balanced audio is in hi-fi gear. And like, I've worked on what I call pro audio, mostly mono systems that are like PA type stuff that have all XLR connections, and from the microphone to the amps to the preamps to all that stuff is all XLR connected. And some of these microphone cables are crazy long, and I understand why you have the common mode rejection of the inverted signals going in a twisted pair down the line with the shield not carrying the signal, which is something I've been a big fan of, is not having the shield carrying the signal. But in audio, it seems like some of this is kind of pseudo balanced, or they have like the same signal on both wires, but the ground's not carrying the signal, and they're calling that balanced, or that they just have the signals to ground impedance matched, but they're carrying the same signal and they're calling that balanced, which that's not really balanced. To me, balanced is you've got the 180 reversed signal on the other wire that's, twisted pair going through it, and that any noise that gets picked up, it's rejecting anything that is not the same. And so that's kind of what I'm diving into right now. The reason I'm diving into this, I've had quite a few people sending me emails. It's like, I've got a full balance system, and I'd like one of your color preamps, but it would need to be full balanced. And then I don't know if you guys remember when I did that review on the Leaf Audio preamp, which I'll put a link below, and also put a link to Amir's review of that same preamp. And I had a viewer that bought one, and honestly, he said he thought it sounded really good. But he saw Amir's review and kind of freaked out, and so he sent it to me for me to check out. And at the time, and I still really haven't figured out a good way of testing balanced signals on my audio analyzer suite, which I'm sure I can figure out. And I'm still studying this, trying to wrap my head all around what's going on. But I tested it with the RCA connections, and Amir tested it with the XLRs. And if you look inside the amp, the XLRs simply have these little transformers sitting right next to them that take the single-ended RCA signal and run them through this little balancing transformer that come up with the balanced XLR out. I got a totally different test measurement than Amir did. And I'm assuming that the difference between our results were that preamp has a horrible implementation of balanced output, and that they put the balanced jacks on there just so they could sell this preamp to the balance crowd. And that's one of the things that I'm starting to kind of understand, especially with tube gear. Very little tube gear is actually set up to work with a balanced signal, or especially like a differential balance where you have the 180 degree out. And I hope I'm using that term right. So from what I've seen, for the most part, is that when people are putting like XLR in jacks on a amp, they're simply running it through some kind of a input transformer that combines the two channels and then turns it into a single-ended signal that then gets sent through the amplifier and out to the speakers. And then the preamp's doing the same thing. If it's a tube preamp, it's got some kind of phase splitter transformer that is creating the balanced output. It goes through the cable, and then it's got another transformer that turns it back. From my understanding, that's not a good thing to be doing. That's kind of like, to me, like you don't see me just throwing coupling caps in an amp for no reason. There's got to be a reason for it. And for the majority of people, unless you're running like 40 feet of RCA cables work fine. And you don't need to be running the signal through two transformers. But there may be a case for using balanced signaling for certain types of applications. And that's one of the things I'm going to be digging into soon. I don't want to talk too soon about this because I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around it. And just like I've told people, I don't do a lot of push-pull stuff. I did this pair of monoblocks. So for you guys that say you've never built any push-pull stuff, here they are. I guess my brain just doesn't really grasp the whole thing that's going on. And so I don't want to like focus on something that I'm not really comfortable with completely understanding what's going on. And it's the same way with this balanced audio. So we're going to be kind of tiptoeing into this. And you see me talk about this little topping E30 DAC. This is what I use on my downstairs system with my little 6BM8 amp. It's hooked up to my computer. Amazon Streaming. I just let Amazon Streaming do this little playlist thing. I pick a song or two or an album, and then it just takes it from there. And it's, you know, really enjoyable. Casual listening for the most part. Bought this topping E70, and it's supposed to be a higher quality DAC. The main reason I bought it is it's got an actual preamp in it, that the volume control is supposed to be a lossless kind of a preamp volume control, unlike some DACs. People say they, you know, if you control the volume with a DAC, it's going to degrade the sound. This isn't supposed to do that, plus it's got a knob on it. So this can act as a preamp. I haven't even hooked this thing up yet. I want to hook it up to my KT120 monoblocks and, you know, use it as the preamp and just see how it works. And there's some settings on it where you can make the output hotter and all that kind of stuff. The main reason I got it, though, is it's got balanced XLR outs on it. And this gives me a source that is balanced XLR type outputs to start playing around with this with tube gear. And one of the things to understand too, when you're dealing with solid state stuff, when you do the conversion from balanced to single-ended and vice versa, you're just adding a few transistors. It's not a big deal. When you're dealing with tubes, obviously, then you're adding a bunch of tubes. And so that makes it much more complicated. Like to do a tube balanced output on my phono stage that's a real kind of native balanced output would require some extra tubes, and or using like a really high-end phase splitter type transformer, which may end up being what we do for the folks that want an XLR output on the phono stage. Once I kind of get what's going on, that may be an option. The other thing I wanted to throw out there is kind of a question to you guys about my phono stage. The early production ones, I'm just spray bombing the chassis. I mean, I'm putting a coat of primer and then putting some Krylon textured black over the top of that. It really matches this powder coating well. It looks almost identical to me. And so it was a way of inexpensively getting into that. I went to a metal coatings place here in Doraville that's right around the corner from me, and I really want to use them because I want to keep this local to my community. And he gave me a basic kind of quote on what it would cost to powder coat the chassis after I do all the fab work on them. And he's got like a $300 minimum, and he was saying that he should be able to do like 10 chassis and 10 covers, inside and out with, the same kind of textured looking black powder coat. And he keeps this product in stock, and he could do 10 of them, which comes out to $30 a piece, which when I sit down and think about it, the amount of money I'm spending on spray paint, and then the amount of time that I'm spending, going outside in my backyard, spraying it and hoping leaves don't fall into it, and just, it's not ideal. And I've had to, some of them I've had to like let them dry and sand down the sides, respray the sides, and it's a hassle. And if I could just take a batch of them over to him, get them all powder coated and get them back, that sounds like a win to me, and you get a more durable finish, which should be an improvement of the product. And probably wouldn't have to change the pricing to do that. But they've also got another coating that they mostly use like on high-end medical equipment, that's an EMI shielding coating. It's a 3M product, and I think it's got a lot of copper in it or something like that. And they have some customers that do medical equipment that they do this, EMI, RFI blocking kind of a coating. And given how high gain these preamps are, and given the fact that in the past, with the right situations, I've had them pick up like radio signals, and you can hear the radio in it through, it's usually something to do with the grounding, but I'm wondering if it would make sense to do some kind of RFI EMI shielding on the inside of that aluminum chassis to, lift the product up, another step over what's available elsewhere and provide some additional shielding from external noise. The problem is it's pretty expensive. And he was saying that it's probably going to be close to $100 a unit to spray that on them. And so, that would raise the cost of those things from like $850 to $950, but it would be a kind of a unique feature for this product, and I think it would be an improvement. But like I said, it's going to be like $1,000 to get 10 of them done. And so I've ordered 10 chassis because I plan on doing this powder coating thing. So I ordered 10 chassis, going to get those all fabricated up. I'm going to take them over and powder coated. But let me know in the comments what you think about, is it worth an extra $100 a unit to have this RFI EMI coating sprayed on the inside of the chassis to make them potentially quieter. So anyway, back to this balanced audio thing and the reason these amps are sitting here. I'm going to use these push-pull EL34 monoblocks as a test bed for this balanced audio stuff. And I've got some ideas. Not sure if it's going to work or not. Going to be removing the volume controls. They're going to put the XLR jacks on the side. They're going to turn them into like XLR only push-pull monoblocks. But I want to play around with this. And I think there may be something cool in the future to implementing this. And then tied into that is trying to figure out how to make it work with the color preamp too. But that's all in the future. And before we wrap up the video, I want to talk about one other thing. One of the things about tube audio, especially tube rectified ones, that will kill these amps in a heartbeat is if you live in an area that has, not really brownouts, but if you have these electrical issues where the power goes off, on, off, on, off, on. My house, it does it probably once a month. And then, sometimes a minute later, the whole power goes out. And I think what's going on is like a transformer blows up, and then the power company redirects the power through another part of the grid. And then that transformer blows up, and then, I don't know enough about the energy grid to know what's going on, but usually shortly thereafter the power just goes out for, several hours. But during that time period when it's going off, on, that can fry the rectifier tube. And so this little thing here is a godsend for tube amplifiers. It's a manually reset GFI little wall wart thing. And you just plug this into your wall, you plug your tube amp gear or any audio gear into this thing, then you have to manually set it. The power goes off, this thing trips. And it will not turn back on until you manually reset it. Which I know sounds like a hassle, but this will keep your tube gear from getting fried when that kind of electrical issue happens. Now I have one of those APS voltage regulator boxes, and it basically does the same thing, that there's a time delay between when the power comes on and when the power actually comes out of the output of it. And it will perform basically the same kind of function if there's this on-off kind of a deal. But this is a cheap solution. I'll put a link below. These things are like $20, I think. I hope that's what it is. By memory, that's about what they are. And it's a really good thing to have if you've got tube audio gear. So anyway, I know I'm kind of back and forth here, but yeah, time to wrap up this video. I want to end it with just thanking all you folks that are viewers of the channel and subscribers of the channel, especially folks that, if you find this information, especially on specific audio gear, has been valuable to help you build something or whatever, to toss a little donation at my website. It really helps for me to be able to just go out and buy stuff like this E70 so I can do some more research on this balanced audio thing so I can bring to you, my viewers, a layman's view of how all this stuff works and why it's important or why it isn't. So, thanks again for your support, and we'll see you on the next Monday Monologue.